Hello everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we are taking a really fascinating look at Paulo Coelho's globally acclaimed masterpiece, The Alchemist. But listen, we aren't just going to look at it as a simple, linear A to B story. Instead, we're going to build a conceptual mind map together. We'll be plotting out the key themes, uncovering the deep relationships between the characters, and connecting the philosophical dots of a shepherd boy named Santiago. It's a journey all about finding meaning, and I am absolutely thrilled to trace these lines with you.
Okay, let's dive into this. We'll be looking at mapping the personal legend, omens and the world's soul, intersecting paths and catalysts, the alchemy of action, and finally, the ultimate treasure.
So, first up, mapping the personal legend.
Right at the literal center of our map is Santiago. He's a shepherd boy from Andalusia. And, before the grand adventure even begins, Santiago has a very comfortable, really safe life. He knows the rolling hills of Spain perfectly. He knows his flock of sheep inside and out. He knows their schedules, he knows which ones are pregnant. Actually, scratch that. He knows exactly how to care for every single one of them. It's a life of total peaceful certainty. But his journey gets triggered by something deeply internal that completely disrupts all of that comfort. A recurrent dream. While sleeping in an abandoned church beneath a huge sycamore tree, he repeatedly dreams of a hidden treasure at the Egyptian pyramids. And this dream, it just pulls him right out of his predictable life. Santiago represents that starting point for anyone who has ever felt that internal tug toward a greater unknown destiny. That sudden feeling that the safe path is just way too small.
And that internal tug actually has a very specific name in Coelho's universe. It is the absolute anchor of our entire mind map, the personal legend. A personal legend is basically your true reason for being. It's the path to realizing your deepest dreams and your ultimate happiness. The book suggests that everyone has a personal legend, especially when we're young and we see the world as this place of endless possibilities where literally nothing is too great to achieve. But as time passes, this mysterious force, usually just society and routine, right, tries to convince people that it's impossible to actually realize it. So, Santiago's decision to sell his beloved flock of sheep and pursue this crazy dream across the sea to the pyramids, that is the very first courageous line drawn on our map. Moving right along to Section 2, Omens and the World's Soul.
Okay, so our next line leads outward directly to a node called the soul of the world. This is the core principle that governs absolutely all things. Coelho's text tells us that everything on Earth is continuously being transformed because the Earth itself is alive. It literally has a soul. Whether it's a mineral evolving over millions of years, a vegetable, an animal, or just a simple human thought, it is all deeply, deeply connected. And Santiago learns to tap into this massive network, but not by reading ancient texts. He does it by keen observation of nature. He learns from his sheep, he watches the vast expanse of the desert, and he realizes that the movement of a caravan and the shifting of the desert sands, they're speaking the exact same language.
And this brilliantly illustrates one of the most famous and profound ideas from the entire book. When you want something, all the universe conspires in helping you to achieve it. Because Santiago is actively pursuing his personal legend and actually leaving his comfort zone behind, the soul of the world genuinely wants him to succeed. It actively guides him through this language of omens. This could be something like the sudden flight of a pair of hawks in the desert sky, or just the appearance of a specific person at precisely the right moment. In our conceptual map here, the universe isn't just some passive backdrop where life just sort of happens. No way. It is an active, deeply invested, and conspiring partner in your growth.
All right, Section 3, Intersecting Paths and Catalysts. As we expand our map even further, we start encountering other characters whose paths intersect with Santiago's, and they act as vital catalysts pushing him forward. First up, let's introduce the Englishman. He joins Santiago's caravan across this incredibly harsh desert. The Englishman represents the pure pursuit of academic knowledge. He is incredibly well-read. He spent a whole decade at university. He knows Esperanto, he studied the world's religions, and he is literally traveling across the dunes, dragging these heavy trunks packed full of complex, coded alchemy books. He is on a purely intellectual quest to find a literal alchemist who can just teach him the exact formula to turn lead into gold.
So if we draw a line connecting Santiago and the Englishman, we find this really fascinating tension. On one side of the connection, you have the Englishman's heavy reliance on complex books, coded instructions, and super rigid academic steps. On the other side, you've got Santiago's preference for observing the behavior of men, the instincts of animals, and those subtle omens scattered across the desert. During their journey, they actually decide to swap approaches. Santiago tries reading the heavy books, and the Englishman tries simply observing the desert. And the result? Well, Santiago finds the books needlessly complicated and frustrating, while the Englishman stares at the sands and basically sees nothing at all. It hits the nail on the head for a vital dynamic on our map, that massive tension between rigid, theoretical book learning and intuitive, experiential learning on the path to truth.
Following the caravan's path, our next major intersection is the Oasis node. This is a crucial turning point for us. Here, amid the palm trees and the wells, Santiago meets a woman named Fatima. In this really beautiful moment, without exchanging a single word at first glance, he instantly understands the most profound part of the language the world speaks: love. It's an omen older than humanity itself, far more ancient than the desert they're standing in. Love doesn't require some complex academic code or a massive translation dictionary, right? It's the pure language everyone on Earth is capable of understanding right in their heart. But importantly, Fatima encourages him to leave the oasis to continue his dangerous quest. This proves one of the book's core tenets: true love never, ever keeps a person from their personal legend. Which brings us to Section 4, the alchemy of action.
Now we arrive at the most intense intersection on our entire mind map. This is the real crucible where theory meets raw practice. Meet the Alchemist. He is a formidable node for sure. He rides a powerful horse, carries a falcon on his shoulder, and makes his home out in the deep, unforgiving desert. When Santiago finally meets him, the boy understandably expects to sit down and be taught all the magical secret formulas for transforming metals. But the alchemist operates entirely differently. He doesn't act as a traditional teacher of facts at all. Instead, he serves as a demanding guide. He intentionally pushes Santiago out of the safety of that oasis and straight into hostile desert situations where the boy has absolutely no choice but to rely on his own intuition and the soul of the world just to survive.
So the crucial point is summarized perfectly here. There is only one way to learn. It's through action. Everything you need to know you have learned through your journey. The Alchemist explains that the true, profound nature of alchemy isn't just about melting down laboratory metals in a crucible. True alchemy is actually about bringing spiritual perfection into direct contact with the material plane. The wise men of old understood that the natural world around us is merely an image, a reflection of paradise. So by striving to become better than we currently are, by actually taking action on our personal legend rather than just dreaming about it, everything around us evolves and becomes better too.
Let's see how this builds into a literal chain reaction that the alchemist guides Santiago through. First, Santiago has to actively listen to his heart's deepest fears of failure and suffering. He learns a really vital truth, that the fear of suffering is actually way worse than the suffering itself. Second, he must completely immerse himself in the environment of the desert, finding life and omens where everything seems entirely barren. Third, through that deep immersion, he connects completely with the soul of the world. And finally, he is brutally tested to master these lessons. Because as the book notes, the universe always tests everything you've learned right before you realize your dream.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the climax of this entire chain reaction. It's just remarkable. Captured by warring desert tribes, Santiago faces an impossible test with his very life on the line. The alchemist casually tells the violent tribal chief that Santiago is a powerful sorcerer who can transform himself into the wind. Santiago is terrified. I mean, he has absolutely no idea how to do that. But by applying everything we've plotted on our mind map so far, he initiates a deep conversation with the desert sands, then the wind, and finally the sun. He realizes that he literally has the universe inside him because they were all made by the exact same hand. By fully tapping into the power of love and the soul of the world, he miraculously summons a massive, destructive sandstorm, metaphorically and literally becoming the wind to save his own life.
And finally, Section 5, the ultimate treasure.
Let's zoom out to see where this map ultimately leads us. Santiago survives the desert and finally reaches the grand Egyptian pyramids, only to be brutally beaten and robbed by refugees. But, in a brilliant, totally ironic twist of fate, as he's being robbed, one of his attackers inadvertently reveals the absolute final omen. The attacker mocks Santiago, saying he shouldn't be so stupid because he too once had a recurrent dream. The attacker dreamed of a physical treasure buried under a sycamore tree at an abandoned church in Spain, literally the exact spot where Santiago used to sleep with his sheep. The physical gold was hiding at the starting node of our map all along. But here's the absolute kicker, right? Santiago had to travel the entire map, endure the harsh desert, and transform his very soul to ever truly understand its value.
Looking at the complete conceptual map we've built together today, we can clearly see how perfectly every single component relies upon the others. The initial pursuit of the personal legend strictly required Santiago to learn the language of omens. Reading those omens required tapping directly into the soul of the world, which ultimately fueled the profound alchemy of action and the discovery of universal love. Think about it. If Santiago had simply stayed comfortably at that ruined church with his sheep, he would never have learned the universal language. He wouldn't have met Fatima, and he certainly wouldn't have mastered his own soul. The grueling journey itself, the internal transformation, and the mastery of those interconnected lessons along the way, that is the actual, true treasure.
And that brings us to the end of our explainer. Paulo Coelho wrote this brilliant book not just to tell a shepherd boy story, but to tell the story of everyone. So I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. Look at the landscape of your own life. Are you actively ignoring the omens around you? Have you stopped pursuing your own personal legend because of the fear of failure? What profound treasure lies hidden at the center of your own map, just waiting for you to step out of your comfort zone and take action? Thank you so much for exploring this incredible journey with me today.